All right, everyone, welcome back to the Poet Speaks podcast, the number one spoken word podcast in the world. I'm speaking it into existence. Proclamations is what we need. All right. Our next guest is a writer and educator from Kingston, Jamaica. She has been teaching English in Japan for over a decade and currently resides in Saitama Prefecture with her husband and cat. Some of her written work has been published in Musings, an anthology series by Writers Bloc Tokyo, as well as in Tokyo Poetry Journal Volume 1. She's one of the editors of Umoja, an anthology of Black poetry, prose, and art, published by Tokyo Poetry Journal. Please welcome to the Poet Speaks podcast, Biankah Bailey. Biankah, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Of course, we're gonna love having you on the podcast. I'm excited for our conversation today. So first and foremost, you've been in Japan, a Jamaican in Japan, 10 years. Tell me what brought you to Japan, what came across that long, broad, big ocean from Jamaica to land in Japan?
All right. So before I moved to Japan, I was actually an international student in the United States. That's where I went to college. And one of the things that I looked into after graduation was possibly going somewhere else to teach and save some money, before going into my, appropriate field for my degree, right? And a professor who I was close to, recommended coming to teach in Japan because her daughter had done it several years before, and she, really enjoyed her time here. So I did my research and I thought, okay, yeah, I'd be into coming to Japan. Like, I like certain things about Japanese culture. I like some animated series from here and things like that. And so, and I've always been interested in traveling throughout Asia. So I thought, yeah, let me really look into it. And I found a job. I was recruited in the US by English language school that had recruitment operations abroad. And then I got the job and moved here about, let's say, almost more than 6 months after I graduated from college.
Wow.
And I've been here. Yeah.
Well, wow. And you've been here for how long? 10 years? 10 years flat or a little bit more?
15.
15 years now. Wow, wow. So tell us a little bit about going back a little bit to Jamaica. Were you, did you start writing out there, start doing your poetry out in Jamaica, or was it something you came to later in life after you graduated?
Right. So I started writing poetry, first of all, for English class. My first poem was an assignment. And, the bug bit, and I realized, wow, I really enjoy the process of doing this. And so I started writing more poems. I started keeping a notebook, sort of, actually, a Mead notebook, exactly like this one.
Ooh, okay. Composition, old school. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started writing my poems in one of those. And yeah, I've just been writing since then. I actually entered the National Literary Arts competition a few years, and I won a few awards while I was in Jamaica, still in high school. And since then, I've just, always been interested in writing poetry and prose fiction.
Yeah. Wow, wow, wow. So tell us a little bit about growing up on the island. Do you get a chance to go back since you've been in Japan? And tell us, is there a bit of a spoken word scene out there, poetry scene out in Jamaica?
Oh yeah, I haven't gone back often. Last time I went was a few years ago. I'm hoping to remedy that and go back very soon. If my mother has her way, possibly for good. Yeah, there's definitely a vibrant poetry scene in various parts of Jamaica. The most famous event in Jamaica being the Calabash Literary Arts Festival, hosted every year. It is an international literary arts festival.
Wow.
And I still have not myself been to Calabash, but it's my dream to actually go there one day and, read stuff and meet some of these amazing authors from all over the world, really. So yeah, there's definitely some sort of scene in different, parts of Jamaica
For
for
sure,
that
for
kind of
sure.
thing. Sure. Yeah.
What part of Jamaica did you grow up in?
So I was born in Kingston. I grew up parts for a few years in Kingston. Then my mom and I moved further east from Kingston to St. Thomas, to where her family lives. And I spent the rest of my high school years out there until I left for the States for college.
Nice, nice.
So basically just Eastern Jamaica.
Got you, got you. So tell us, so a Jamaican person in Japan, I'm so curious, what is that like? Tell us what is the most, I'd say, bizarre and
Hmm.
good most bizarre thing you've ever encountered versus the most good great thing that you've ever encountered. Like what is that kind of like being a Jamaican person living in Japan? Because obviously you must be really the anomaly, if you will, right? Versus so many Japanese people being just a black person in Japan and adding on to that being Jamaican. What has that been like? What's the experience like for those that don't know?
Yeah, I think it really depends on where in Japan you are. So because I'm in the Kanto area, pretty close to Tokyo, there are quite a few people who know, have some idea about Jamaica, at least have heard of Jamaica,
Mm.
especially because during the 80s and 90s in particular, the reggae scene in Japan like completely blew up, and there are so
Oh.
many reggae fans, super fans, who show up to things like what used to be the One Love Jamaica Festival. That was a cultural festival showcasing Jamaican culture, products, things like this.
Mm.
That used to happen every year in Harajuku. So for me, encountering people here as a Jamaican in Japan, well, for me, one of the bizarre things is I meet people and they assume that I speak French.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yes. I don't know where that comes from. I think they're probably confusing Jamaica and Haiti.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. Another thing is a lot of people assume, automatically just assume that Jamaica is in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They can't really place it on a map. And so when I tell them, actually, no, Jamaica is very close to North America, they're like, oh, so this, like, yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, so as for the positives, I really am happy with, being able to meet other Jamaicans here. There is a, pretty great Jamaican community here
Mm.
in Japan, especially in the Tokyo area. Um, I like the relative safety of living in Japan. I can walk around
Yeah.
pretty much late at night with very little risk, I should say, not zero, because that's not the truth, but very little risk of running into any kind of trouble. And yeah, I just like how convenient a lot of stuff is here. And it's I've been here for so long because it's been a pretty comfortable life.
Yeah. It's definitely home
Yeah.
for you now. 15 years is definitely home for you now. So I'm curious, what inspirations do you draw like for your spoken word poetry? Because I know you had mentioned you started your first poem was high school, English class, high school and grade school, right? So kind of now is like as your career, as you've gone on to publish so many works and co-edit, what has been your true inspiration? What keeps you going? What do you find yourself writing about a lot?
It varies from time to time. Right now, I find myself writing a lot about, you know, the experience of being an immigrant, and
Mm.
focusing on, these themes of finding one's place in
Mm.
a second home, and what it means to just be a regular working person who just happens to live in a country different from one's birth.
Mm.
I was saying this in another interview with someone, with I believe it was Michael Fraser from Tokyo Weekender magazine. We talked about this, and he's also published in Umoja, by the way. Um, One of the things that comes up often in discussions about immigrants, right? You have the people who are very anti-immigration and say all of these things to denigrate immigrants and so on and so forth. And so on the opposite side, you have the defense, which is, oh, yes, we should celebrate immigrants because they are our doctors and engineers and, all of these lofty professions. And I'm here thinking, but what if you just happen to be an immigrant office worker or teacher just trying to make a living without being some major contributor to your second home society? Does your story not matter? Is your life also not valuable? And so I've been trying to explore that a lot in especially my prose writing recently, particularly in the novel that I've been working on, which is a science fiction novel.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great point that you bring up, because it's so much of it turns into this whole thing of, immigrants, you are this, there's surgeons, lawyers, doctors, civil rights leaders, all those things. But it's like, okay, what about the person that's just living? They're just existing. Yeah. Does their life not matter? You know what I mean? Why does it have to always be this thing of, you must be a big part, you must contribute in capitalism in some sort of way, right? In this grandiose type of
your
way.
life must always be in service.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. There you go. Yeah, your life must always be in service to the greater good, if you will. Like, it's really, it's a really kind of convoluted thing, right? It's definitely very convoluted, full of a lot of contradictions.
Yeah. So that's what I've been reflecting on a lot in my writing recently. So that's where I'm at right now.
Gotcha.
And of course, I draw inspiration from, just personal experiences, everyday, things like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm curious. So you talked a little bit about, your published work. So you do, so obviously Umoja, which is like one of the first all Black, just anything written in Japan with all Black poets and writers to ever really be produced. But you also do science. You said science fiction is a novel that you're working on now. Talk a little bit about that.
So the novel that I'm working on is, focuses on two siblings who are migrating to base out in space where humans live sometime in the future, because the planet itself is so polluted and just very difficult to live in, except and so those who can afford to leave do leave. And so what I'm trying to show here is how the themes of having to struggle to find one's place in somewhere that's foreign, how we can explore that using science fiction to kind of show that, well, these people are just regular people trying to make their way through the new world and the new order that they live in, just like immigrants do now in their second homes, just trying to make ends meet, support their families, and survive. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to explore in this book.
Got you. How much of that is rooted still based in your poetry, or is kind of, for you, storytelling, is it poetry still exists in those avenues even if you're writing a book, or is it completely like a different set of tools for you, writing a story versus writing a poem?
Yeah, I feel like it's a completely different set of tools. I definitely have to look at structure and just the, how do I put it, just the shape of piece. And for me, definitely, it feels like I, have a poet brain and a prose brain, the way that I approach writing each. So for me, with prose, I tend to like start, take a break, start, take a break. Sometimes I take breaks for months at a time. But with a poem, I usually start out with an idea of like how I want the poem to be structured. There's just kind of an idea in my head of like what I want the shape of it to be. and what the theme is. And so once I start actually getting the words down for a poem, I will just sit down and write it all the way through nonstop. So in some ways, like getting poetry out is a bit challenging just because I need to really sit down and commit the time to do it once I start. Like I can't start a poem and then take a break and come back to it. It just, that's really not how my process works for that, as opposed to writing prose and long form.
Really? Wow. Okay. Interesting. So you literally, you'll put something down for like a month and then just be like, I'll come back to it when I come back to it, when I feel something awakening in me again. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean that I've stopped thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like I'm still, considering, especially something I have an idea about that has a very strong theme that I really want to explore all throughout. I'll be constantly, turning thoughts around, thinking about it, sometimes stopping to write little notes down, like I remember this, like maybe I should do this with this character, and so on. So I'm constantly thinking about what directions to go in. One day I actually sat down and sketched out a mock-up of the space base that these people are living in, just to kind of give myself a visual of where everybody would be. Just because, even though I'm not actually writing words down, I still going through the process of creating this story and creating this world. So yeah, it's definitely a different process for me than writing a poem.
For sure. Oh, very, very interesting. I think just exploring people's writing process. So let's talk a little bit about Umoja. Like we said, that's the first all Black written poetry, anything book collection written in Japan, first of its kind. For you, what did that mean for you to be able to co-edit that book and being the first of its kind in Japan? What does that kind of mean to you?
It was a daunting task at first. Like when Marcellus asked me to come on board, I took a beat and thought about it, because I knew that it was going to be it was going to be huge, just the magnitude of what this project would mean. And so coming on board for me was, yes, taking on this huge project and considering the seriousness of it and its impact. But, also it was a way for me to stretch myself, because it was my first time actually doing anything like of this nature in terms of editing. Right. So I really had to sit down and, I was reading through submissions and deciding, what I thought should go in and what should not. I was really always asking myself questions like, is this a good decision? Is this a good fit? Does this work next to this piece, and so on. So definitely, a first time sort of situation for me.
It definitely seems like a very daunting task as well to have to do something like that. I mean, because like you said, it's the magnitude of what you're doing. Then on top of that, I'm sure so many submissions, right? How does it work? A lot of people just submit and then you kind of just sift through and you're like, all right, this goes in the book. No, this doesn't go in the book. This goes in the book. How does that process kind of look for you on your editing side?
Well, we put out we cast a wide net with this call for submissions, because we were starting out. We wanted because it was going to be the first of its kind. We wanted to see what would be out there, and we weren't expecting so many submissions, right? Once we started really looking at the submissions, for the both of us, for both me and Marcellus, we kind of saw the book take a certain shape. Like, yes, this has to be a representative image of diversity within the diaspora. And that's how we eventually came to the title Umoja, right?
Means unity.
Yeah. And so putting the pieces together, it was kind of basically an intuitive process.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of just had to feel everything out. Like, does this feel right? Does this feel like it, goes with these art pieces? And yeah, it was unlike anything that I had ever done before.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
For sure. No, I think that's very fascinating because the book kind of explores both poetry as well as art with photography, just all done by these Black artists. Everyone was living in Japan, correct? It's everyone, just from all over the place.
Yeah, we actually had submissions from Nigeria.
Wow.
Submissions from, there was one person who's actually in France. Several submissions from people currently in the United States and in the Caribbean as well. Yeah.
Wow. So very far reaching. Yeah. Such a big, I'm sure a big honor to be able to be the co-editor of that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm curious for you, what's your favorite type of poetry to make? Are you a big fan of jumping on stage, doing spoken word, mic nights? What's your kind of style when it comes to poetry? Are you more just for not the stage, but the page? What would you put your style more so as?
Before 2011, I would have said just the page, but I do enjoy both. I would have to be in the mood for stage readings, and the piece would have to be right for the stage. You know what I mean? Like, some things just read better on the page, and some things, sound better when you read them out loud. That's in my experience. And so it really depends. But I do just enjoy the process of just sitting down to write when the writing is good.
For sure. Are you so would you say when you do when you do spoken word, what is your kind of mindset when you jump on the stage? Do you have a process, like how you said you have a process for how you write, structure your prose or your poems? Do you have a process for how you jump on stage to be able to present?
Yeah, well, for me, because I didn't start out as a spoken word poet, so for me it takes a bit more preparation.
Yeah.
A lot of people. So when I write something that I think is something that I want to read on stage, I kind of have to take my time with it. I'll read it out loud a few times just to kind of get a feel for how it sounds. Also a very intuitive process. You kind of just, it sounds right when you hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, for doing spoken word, the key thing for me is preparation in advance. Yeah.
Preparation leads to what's the phrase? Preparation leads to, what is it? Emancipation? I'm not even sure. Something.
I would hope.
Preparation leads to, I get you. The preparation, when you prepare to fail, you fail to prepare. So I definitely feel you on that, especially. Yeah, especially if you're not, if you didn't come into poetry, I guess, doing spoken word at first, I could totally understand. It's definitely a different process. Do you get stage fright?
Still, yeah, sometimes.
Damn.
Especially it's a crowd that I'm not familiar with. Like, if I go to certain places where I know the people, I can kind of feel them out while I'm reading. And that's sure. But if I'm in front of a completely new audience, then yeah. So like the 2014 Tokyo Poetry Slam, whoo, boy, was I nervous. Like, I was nervous the whole night before. I think I probably stayed up like until maybe 3 a.m, the night before the event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I feel like, yeah, those nerves never truly go away. But Moving on, I'm curious what for you, obviously such a long career and such a long time being in the spoken word scene and poetry scene and just writing scene in general, what do you think people can take away from spoken word poetry?
Well, basically whatever they want to. It's, similar to, music, any type of art. It's what do you feel? What emotions do the pieces evoke? What kind of ideas are opened up for you when
Mm,
you hear something? How do you see the world differently or not after hearing a piece? So it depends on the individual. It depends on how keenly they listen, because nobody likes I mean, I don't know about you, but some few things irritate me more than getting on stage trying to read and having a crowd of people talking in
hmm.
the back and I can't hear myself.
Yeah,
So you can't really get anything out of spoken word unless you actually actively listen. And from then on, it just depends on what you pull from it.
mm, for sure. Interesting. What do you take away from spoken word?
What do I take away from spoken word? Just different ways to present language,
Hmm.
different ways to use your voice. And I don't mean just your literal vocals, but different ways to present ideas that you have, and thoughts that you want to put out into the world. That's definitely what I take away from spoken word. I listen to people like Patricia Smith sometimes. I listen to compilations like the Spoken Word Revolution. That's a great CD accompaniment to the book. Just hearing the way people like really express themselves.
Yeah,
It's a way for me to actually learn and absorb different ways of presenting, for
absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, one final question before we wrap up this interview. I'm so curious. So, Biankah, why do you need to get your words out?
I need to get my words out because I will lose my mind if I don't. I mean, they're just,
Mm,
if they're just in here, like what do I do? What do I do but get them out?
hmm.
Like there is just no other option for me. I think, wow, this would be a great story. Do I just sit with this in my mind? No, there's no option than to just get it down on paper and see how it plays out. The same thing with a poem.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, beautiful, beautiful answer. Thank you so much. So this has been so great. I mean, just all hearing about all of the things that you're doing, your method for writing, where you're from, and all that good stuff. So thank you so much. So tell us, what is 2022? What's the rest of that looking like for Biankah Bailey? And where can we find your writing and beyond? You have any Insta handles, social media handles, website?
Sure.
Please let us know.
Okay, so I for 2022, I want to finally finish my novel. Yay!
Yeah,
I want to definitely, at least wrap up a first rough draft of that
for
and
sure.
start, you know, polishing it up, working on rewrites and things like that. So that's the big goal.
Mm,
I definitely want to write more poems. I haven't written many new poems in the last couple of years, just a few. So I want to do some more poetry this year for sure. And where to find me? Well, I am at Biankah, that's Biankah,
mm.
Bailey, Bailey, one word, on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also find some of my stuff on Medium. I do a little bit of writing on there as well. And on Ko-fi, ko-fi.com. I'm also on there. I actually have sci-fi short series that I'm writing on that website, so you can check it out as well.
Yeah. Hey, that's what's up. Awesome. Yo, and then where can we check out Umoja for those that want to go check the book out?
Sure. Umoja, if you're in Japan, you can buy Umoja at Tokyo Poetry Journal's website. That's topojo.com, topojo.com. For everyone else all around the world, you can buy Umoja on Book Depository, Amazon, and if you're in the US, barnesandnoble.com.
All right, worldwide. Oh, well, thank you so much, Biankah. Everyone that is listening, all of Biankah's links, information will be in the YouTube comment section of this video. So the YouTube comment section of the podcast. So go to the YouTube page and check it out. Again, Biankah, oh my goodness, thank you so much for being on the Poet Speaks podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Amanda. It was great. It was great talking to you again.
Absolutely. All right. Like I said, please, everyone, go check out Biankah's amazing work and all her upcoming projects. And everyone, please like, comment, subscribe, share this podcast with your friend, your friend's friends, your mom's friends, your dad's friends. Share it with everybody that you know. Again, we're the #1 spoken word podcast in the world. Get it right. Okay. Yes, we are. Get it right. All right. And everyone, thank you so much. This is the Poet Speaks podcast. We will see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.